of a conforming Jew that aroused the ire of Mattathias, a godly priest, and he slew the Jewish worshiper, slew the Syrian or Greek soldier, and of course this is warfare, and guerrilla warfare broke out, and as a result the Jews won their semi-independence for a century. Now, we would regard this image of the Greek god in the Holy of Holies and the desecration of the holy place as fulfilling Daniel, except that Jesus said, when you see this come to pass, you know that this is the fulfillment of Daniel. And that was already 174, almost 200 years before Jesus said this. As a result, we look for a second fulfillment. Having been fulfilled once, we expect another fulfillment toward the end of this age. Jesus warns those that are in Jerusalem to flee when they see this begin to happen, and the Jewish Christians did this in the early days of the church, and when the Romans came and captured Jerusalem in AD 70 and took it, the Christians had already spared their lives by obeying this particular passage. This again does not mean this will not have a second fulfillment in the end of this particular age, but like the prophecy of the desolation spoken of by Daniel, which is already fulfilled once and has one yet to go, so this warning telling the people to flee has had one fulfillment and may well yet have another. That there will be believers on the earth during the tribulation is indicated by verse 22. If those days which had not been shortened, no human being would have been saved, but for the sake of the elect they will be shortened. Therefore, there must be believers, whether they've been converted during the tribulation, whether referring now to Jewish saints, is not made clear to us. We'll read now in verse 23 down through verse 29, or actually through verse 30.
Then if anyone says to you, Lo, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Lo, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, Lo, he is out in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, Lo, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Where the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn.
There is a tendency, even in religious circles or spiritual circles, for demand to be supplied. And if there is a demand for the coming of a deliverer, there are men who will volunteer for the job when they're not called of God. They'll be just exactly like the young man who wanted to run with the message that Joab was killed. And the message was given to another. And he demanded he'd run anyway. So he ran, he got there first. Because he had no message, when he arrived and David said, what news? And he said, I have no news. There's one coming after me with the news. He'd outrun him, but he was not allowed to give the message. In the same way here, there are people who will supply a demand. If people want a deliverer, they will claim to be the deliverer. But Jesus said, don't believe it. Do not follow false Christs. That many even will try to lead astray even the elect, the saved. And there are going to be people who say, he's in secret, he's come in secret. He's over at my house, he's out in the wilderness, he's out in the desert. Don't believe it, he said. When he does come, it will be sudden. And here again, we speculate just a little bit. I do not like to have to help God out. I am perfectly willing to use the idea of miracle to answer the prophecies. And yet it is true that in our day, with our present facilities of satellite communication, if Jesus were returned to Jerusalem, he'd be seen the world around by electricity, that is by lightning, as fast as lightning, around the world that very day, although he was physically, would be in Jerusalem. And so at least mechanically, the fulfillment of this is available today. We find in verse 29 that this will be accompanied by the darkening of the sun and the moon not giving its light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven be shaken, and that Jesus will come. I personally believe that some of this darkening is going to be in our atmosphere and not out in space. That is, I do not think of the sun itself, 91 million miles away, as being darkened at all. I do not think of the moon out there, what is it, 285,000 miles, as being darkened either. What I'm thinking here is that we're going to have some type of, whether it's a result of atomic warfare or some disturbance in our atmosphere, that looking from the earth at the sun and looking from the earth at the moon, that there will be some obstruction in the atmosphere or stratosphere so that they will appear as blood, and that this will actually be confined really to the outer reaches of the atmosphere of the earth, although it look like it's up and affect the sun. You may not like my explanation, that's all right. That's just the way I conceive of it.